Let's work on authentication. And here's a little challenge for you. Try starting this or working on this on your own. For that, make sure that when we click authenticate here, we're not taking to this page, but to a brand new page, which you have to create in the user pages folder. You could name this page auth.js or authenticate.js or something like this. On this new page, add a form. You can use the use form hook for that and add a form that renders an email and a password field. You also want to add some validation to these fields, and in util, for example, you find this function you can execute to set up email validation. The password should be validated with validator min to check that it's at least, let's say, 5, 6, 7, whatever you want characters long. So add such a form utilizing our form hook and this validation and the input component, and add it on a brand new form. Definitely try this out on your own. As a next step, after a short pause, which I give you to pause this lecture and try it on your own, we'll do it together. So, were you successful? Let's try it together, and for that I will add a brand new page here, the auth.js page, in the user pages folder. I will also add auth CSS to have some styling for it, and attached you find that styling. You can just paste it in there. And I'll leave it up to you whether you now use my styling and my markup or stick to yours. The general logic, of course, should be the same so that we have no problems in the rest of the course. So in the auth.js file, of course, we import React from React. We import that auth CSS file we just added to get the styling. And then here we have the auth component, which will render some JSX later, and we export this auth component. Now, inside of the auth component, for the moment, I'll just render auth as a text here to see whether I can get there, because in app.js, I now want to register it as a route. And there, I simply want to add a brand new route, maybe here at the end, where the path is /auth, let's say. And then we render our auth page, which we therefore need to import. So here we got auth from /user /pages /auth, and auth is getting rendered here, like this. Okay, so now with that, if I now click on authenticate, I'm taken to the auth page. So that's working. Of course, make sure that the link here in the nav links is the same link you're watching for in your route config. So now in the auth page, let's replace the h2 tag with the actual content we want there. And the actual content we want there, of course, is totally up to you. I, of course, want to have a form in there, but a form which I will wrap into a card. So I'll import card from shared components, UI elements, card. So I'll actually wrap everything here in such a card, like that. And split this across multiple lines to make it easier to read. And besides my card here, or besides my form, in that card I want to have some text, some title where I say login required, and then maybe this horizontal separator just to have some visual separation between the title and the actual form. On the card I'll also add a class name of authentication, which is simply a class set up here in auth CSS. Now inside of the form, we can now add our controls. So let's import input from shared components, form elements, input, and let's repeat that for the button. So let's import button from shared components, form elements, button, so that we have these two things available, these two components. And now in the form, we can add our button here, our input here, excuse me, and that will be the input for the email. So I'll set an ID of email here. I will also set the element here to input, because it should be a regular input. The type can be set to email here, so that we take advantage of this native built-in email type. And the label can also be email, to give the user a clear idea of what we want there. Validators, of course, is an array, and there I mentioned that we can use some of the validators I created. So I will import them from shared util validators. There I want to have the validator email and the validator min length. That is what I need. So here then I will execute validator's email as a function to add that email validation here, and also provide an error text, which could be please enter a valid email address, like that. Now onChange also needs to be connected to something, and here I will use my custom hook again. So import use form from shared hooks form hook, so that we can call use form up there and initialize it. Initially the form is invalid, and for the inputs we have an email input where the value is empty and which is also invalid initially, and we'll also then have a password input where the value will also be empty initially and it's also invalid. So that's my initial state, and then just as before, useForm returns something. It returns an array with 3 elements. I need 2 of them here for now, and that's the form state and the input handler. And now the input handler here can be bound to onChange on this input. And then we can duplicate this input here, and create a second input with an ID of password, and a type of password, and a label of password, and a validator of, let's say, min length 5, but it's up to you which min length you want to require here. And of course here I will say in the error text, please enter a valid password, at least 5 characters. Now let's also add a button here of type submit, and on the button I'll say log in for the moment. Later we'll also add a sign up functionality, but for now it's just about logging in. Now that button should be disabled if the form is invalid. So we'll set disabled equal to not form state is valid. If the form is not valid, the button is disabled. With that, this should actually work. Let's save this. And I get an error, yes, because it's not onChange, but on input, on our own input components. So let's replace onChange with onInput there, and that looks a lot better. Now you will see if I enter an email here, this is not valid. If I tap out of there, as soon as I make it a valid email address, it is accepted though. Password has to be at least 5 characters long, and then it's accepted as well. And yeah, this all seems to work here. Let's also submit it. And of course that does not work yet because I haven't added a submit handler. So let's add a new function here. The Auth submit handler maybe, where we get the event and then call event prevent default to prevent this automatic submission of this request and the reloading of the page therefore. And then in here I will console log form state. Later, as always, we'll do more. I'll actually console log form state inputs. Later we'll do more because later we will also have a backend. For now, let's just bind on submit here to the Auth submit handler where we log our input state. Now with that, if we retry that, enter some data here, log in, this looks good to me. So this basic form is working, and that's nice. It also shows us how reusable our own hook and the input component is. But of course, logging in alone is not enough. Users have to sign up before they can log in. And during sign up, they should also provide a name. And of course, we want to be able to switch between both modes. So you can also try implementing this on your own. It will be a bit more tricky. In the next lecture, we'll do it together.